Peruvian National Police units entered San Marcos University campus to disperse demonstrators who had arrived 3 days ago to support protests against Dina Boluarte's government. In Brazil, President Lula da Silva dismissed the commander of the army 2 weeks after the coup attempt by Bolsonaro supporters. And in Bolivia, President Luis Arce defended the country's economic and social growth 14 years after the founding of the plurinational state. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Peru, the National Police entered the campus of the San Marcos University to evict students and provincial delegations gathered in areas as part of the anti-government protest. Police officers entered with violence and subdued the students and social leaders who had organized the university campus to host the caravans of indigenous communities that arrived in the capital for the massive protest against the Peruvian government. According to reports by in the Anti-Terrorism Directorate. They already have a legal team of 30 lawyers and 3 interpreters from the Ministry of Culture, but police repression persists. San Marcos University was taken over by students with the permission of the university authorities on January 17th, in solidarity with the people who have been protesting against the government and Congress of the Republic. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Christian Salazar, described as unacceptable the death of more than 52 people during police repression in anti-government protests in Peru. In the context of his visit to the South American country, the senior official of the international organization held a meeting with the congressional leadership and Prime Minister Alberto Otarola, during which Salazar advocated immediate measures to prevent the recurrence of such events. Likewise, he called for opening of investigations on these cases. Salazar also condemned the stigmatization of demonstrators by Peruvian authorities, who have labeled them as terrorists, while stressing the need to guarantee the right to protest by Peruvian state. The President of Bolivia, Luis Arce, vindicated Bolivia's economic and social growth on the 14th anniversary of the foundation as a plurinational state. In the framework of activities to commemorate this date that were held at Casa Grande del Pueblo, the Bolivian government headquarters, President Arce delivered a speech where he recalled the social struggles of indigenous movements in the country for over 500 years and reaffirmed the plurinational character of the republic. The President also recognized that each and every Bolivian man and woman governs the plurinational state after former President Evo Morales managed to unify historically displaced sectors under governments that work for foreign interests into a political force that managed to bring them to power. On the other hand, Arce highlighted that despite the international context and the attempts to destabilize the country, economic growth was achieved to the end of 2021 and 2022. Brazilian President Luis Lula da Silva removed the commander of the army from his post, a move that came amid a crisis with the military after the siege of the 3 branches of government. In a statement, the president announced that he appointed General Tomás Miguel Ribeiro Paiva as the new commander of the Brazilian army, replacing General Julio César da Ruda, who took office during the government of former President Jair Bolsonaro. In this sense, President Lula emphasized the measure was taken because Arruda did not show willingness to answer questions about the actions of some military sectors in the coup attempt which took place 2 weeks ago. After his appointment, General Ribeiro declared himself in favor of a non-partisan army to guarantee the sovereignty of the state. The delegations of the Colombian government and the National Liberation Army announced that the second round of peace negotiations will start on February 13th, with Mexico as the host country. The announcement was made Saturday after a meeting of the guarantor countries in the Aquiles Nazoa Cultural Center in Caracas, Venezuela, by representatives of the guarantor countries and the church. The statement praises the work of Venezuela during the first round of negotiations and the importance of incorporating the civil society to the construction of the peace process and a bilateral ceasefire. On his part, Colombian government negotiator Oti Patiño said that delegations will evaluate progress made at this first round of talks and will raise the issue of citizens' participation at the second round of talks. In Colombia, the humanitarian caravan undertaken by the government and a representation of the National Liberation Army in the Pacific region concluded on Saturday. The caravan began on January 17th with the goal of learning about the situation suffered by indigenous and Afro-descendant communities in the towns of Bajo Calima, in the department of Valle del Cauca, and Medio San Juan, department of Choco. During the mobilization, representatives from these communities shared their realities, which will allow to establish the conditions to overcome forced confinement in the near future due to the increase in violence in the regions. Upon ending the caravan, the government and the National Liberation Army delegates presented a report that will help to adopt measures for the communities at risk in the Pacific region. In Haiti, health authorities reported an increase in cholera deaths to 496 after almost 4 months of the virus outbreak. Official figures indicate that more than half of those infected are male patients and with an average age of 19 years old. There have been confirmed over 25,000 suspected cases and some 21,400 people have been hospitalized. The World Health Organization remarked that the virus is spreading at an unprecedented rate, especially in nations recently affected by climatic events, while vaccines have become extremely scarce. Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. In Spain, people demonstrated at the Cibeles Square in Madrid against the government of Pedro Sánchez and in defense of the Constitution. People were rallied by several social organizations like Spain's Civic Forum, the Freedom and Alternative Foundation, all with the support of the Popular Party and other political organizations. Demonstrators accused Sánchez of being a liar, a traitor, and for acting against democracy. People have also voiced their rejection of the government's policies, like amendments to the Penal Code regarding crimes of sedition and embezzlement, for instance.
Democratic regimes can mutate without military uprisings into collectivist populism in which the essence of liberal democracy is dismantled. Regimes in which the separation of powers, the rule of law, fundamental rights or freedom of enterprise become mere caricatures. Pedro Sánchez is manipulating the justice. Justice isn't going to be independent anymore. The Constitutional Court isn't going to be independent anymore, and he's taking over all the institutions. And this isn't good for Spain, nor democracy, nor anybody, and especially not for the future of our children and grandchildren.
A dozen youth organizations marched through Paris on Saturday to show their anger over the government's pension reform. Actively supported by far-left party France On Vote Party, they were hoping to capitalize on the success of the massive inter-union march and strike on Thursday. On Vote leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon congratulated demonstrators on his Twitter page, saying that over 150,000 people turned out. The turnout was also praised by Colin Champion, president of the La Voix Lycéenne Union, while Alternative, another student union, welcomed a very massive youth turnout. More determined than ever to keep the pressure on the government, the unions announced a new day of protest scheduled for January 31st.
Question of justice. That is to say, they tell us that we have to cut somewhere to have money to be able to finance other pensions because supposedly we are too many. But in fact, the money is there. It's in the super profits and in many other things. For me, it's a question of the choices they are making. They are going to look for the money where they think it is easier to find it. That is to say, in the social sector.
I am an ecologist, and I think we should work less and also for less time to reduce the production of superficial and very polluting goods, and also that we should have more time to devote to a social and environmental commitment, to take care of each other, to educate ourselves. I have the feeling that the stress and fatigue generated by work, we tend to buffer it by overconsumption.
In Germany, citizens took to the streets in the country's capital to demand fairer prices for producers, a more sustainable agriculture, and the redistribution of public wealth. In the framework of the Green Week, the Agricultural and Environmental Alliance, We Have Had Enough, took to the streets to demand measures against the climate crisis, the protection of biodiversity, and the end of genetic engineering in agriculture. A convoy of trucks led the demonstration, with protesters marching from the government district of Berlin in animal costumes, holding pots and pans in their hands. The Chilean government decided to extend for 1 month the state of emergency implemented in a sector of Viña del Mar city affected by a wildfire. According to the Minister of the Interior and Public Security, Carolina Toja, the extension is given after the conditions that caused the wildfire still persist. According to the government official, 2 people died, more than 1,000 were affected, and around 300 houses were damaged, many of them completely destroyed as a result of the fire. The blaze began on December 22nd in the area known as Santa Agua, and due to the drought and the strong winds, it spread rapidly and reduced more than 100 hectares to ashes. The government provided emergency financial assistance to the families and implemented a support system to restore houses, considering the degree of damage caused by the flames. In Madagascar, at least 1 person is missing after floods in the country. Authorities report that the northeastern city of Sambava was hit by tropical storm Cheneso on Friday night. Preliminary reports revealed that at least 300 citizens have been evacuated and more than 700 houses were affected by the rains. Officials also indicated that the regions of Diana, Saba, and Analanhirofo are under red alert, while stating that they will continue with search and rescue works in the region. We have more news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Nigeria's health authorities confirmed a deadly outbreak of diphtheria on Saturday. In Kano State, one of the worst-hit states in the country's north, the Health Commission recorded more than 70 suspected cases along with 25 deaths related to the bacterial infection. The total number of confirmed cases and deaths is not yet known. The nation's Center for Disease Control and Prevention revealed it initiated an emergency response to the outbreak and is monitoring the situation in 4 of the country's 36 states. According to Kano State's chief epidemiologist, authorities were first alerted about an outbreak among children in late December. Diphtheria causes breathing difficulties, heart failure, and paralysis. The people most at risk are unvaccinated or those who live in areas with poor sanitation. Burkina Faso military authorities report the release of 66 women and 4 babies kidnapped by terrorist groups. Women and children were taken to Ouagadougou, capital of the country. They had been kidnapped since last Thursday in Anbinda village in the north of the African nation while searching for food and supplies. The military report confirms that after an intense air and ground search, they were reportedly spotted in the Tuguri area. After undergoing a medical examination, they will be interrogated to find out if their testimonies could help in the arrest of the extremists. The Syrian government reopened 2 telecommunications centers that underwent reconstruction work in the areas freed from terrorism in the northwest of the nation. In the official ceremony, the Minister of Telecommunications and Technology, Iyad Mohamed Al-Khatib, We opened the center in the town of Alte in Idlib with a capacity of up to 1,000 telephone lines and more than 200 internet accesses. On the other hand, in the Yasser al-Hajj neighborhood in the city of Aleppo, a center with a capacity of 10,000 lines was inaugurated. The facilities were completely destroyed by mercenaries, as were other infrastructures that received technological upgrades by the government of Bashar al-Assad. On Saturday, tens of thousands of Israelis gathered in Tel Aviv to protest plans by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's new government to overhaul the judicial system. Demonstrators said the measures imperiled the country's democratic fundamentals. Local media citing police said more than 100,000 people were out protesting in the city. Saturday's demonstrations followed another protest last week, which also drew tens of thousands in an early challenge to Netanyahu and his ultra-nationalist and ultra-orthodox government, the most right-wing in Israeli history. Earlier this week, Netanyahu vowed to continue with the judicial overhaul plans despite the protests. Opponents say the changes could help the prime minister evade conviction in his corruption trial or make the court case disappear altogether. The 2023 Spring Festival Gala brought audiences a grand treat of colorful performances ranging from singing and dancing to comedic sketches and acrobatics. The gala opened at 8 p.m. Saturday Beijing time on the eve of the Chinese Lunar New Year of the Rabbit, with a theme of New Era of Prosperities, better life in each passing day. The entire show adhered to the general tone of joy, auspiciousness, and jubilation, highlighting the theme of happiness and confidence, while striving to express the best wishes for the Chinese Lunar New Year in a vibrant, warm, caring, and hopeful atmosphere. The 4-hour extravaganza featured a feast of traditional Chinese arts performances such as Manjin music, acrobatics, martial art, steelwork, and operas. Recognized by Guinness World Records as the world's most watched TV program since its debut in 1983, the hours-long gala boasts billions of viewers every year. And we have come to the end of this news brief, and you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.